Imagine a world where powerful nations controlled vast territories thousands of miles away, reshaping entire societies to fit their interests. This was the reality for centuries under colonization. But how did it all begin? Who were the biggest colonizers, and why did they feel the need to expand beyond their borders? In this video, we'll explore the origins of colonization, the key empires involved, and the reasons behind their expansion. We'll start with early colonization, move through the age of exploration, and discuss the lasting impact colonization has had on the world, including which countries prospered after colonization and which ones remain struggling. If you find this topic fascinating, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes on the untold stories of history. Colonization is the process by which a country establishes control over foreign lands and peoples, often through military conquest, economic exploitation, or cultural dominance. While we often associate colonization with European empires, the concept is much older. Ancient civilizations such as the Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans engaged in colonization by setting up trading outposts and military settlements across the Mediterranean and beyond. The Roman Empire, for example, expanded across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, imposing its laws, language, and governance on conquered peoples. During the medieval period, European expansion slowed, but it never completely stopped. The Vikings, for instance, briefly settled in North America around the year 1000, though their colonies did not last. Meanwhile, the Crusades in the 11th to 13th centuries played a crucial role in shaping European attitudes toward conquest and expansion. By fighting for control over the Holy Land, European powers became more familiar with the wealth and trade networks of the Middle East, inspiring later exploration and expansion efforts. The real turning point for colonization came during the Age of Exploration, starting in the 15th century. Advances in maritime technology, such as the compass, the caravel, a new type of ship, and improved map-making, allowed European sailors to travel further than ever before. Portugal and Spain led the way, driven by the desire for wealth, trade, and the spread of Christianity. Portuguese explorers, like Prince Henry the Navigator, mapped out new sea routes along the coast of Africa, leading to the establishment of colonies in places like Angola, Mozambique, and Brazil. Spain, on the other hand, set its sights on the Americas. In 1492, Christopher Columbus landed in the Caribbean, marking the beginning of European colonization in the New World. This triggered an era of competition among European powers. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 divided the world between Spain and Portugal, with Spain taking most of the Americas and Portugal focusing on Africa, Brazil, and parts of Asia. However, other European nations, including Britain, France, and the Netherlands, soon entered the race, looking for their own share of overseas wealth and power. Among the biggest colonizers, Spain and Portugal were the first to establish vast overseas empires. Spain controlled much of Latin America, the Caribbean, and the Philippines, extracting enormous wealth through gold and silver mining. The Spanish also aimed to spread Christianity, often forcibly converting indigenous peoples. Portugal, while smaller in land holdings, was dominant in trade, establishing colonies in Brazil, Africa, and parts of Asia, where they controlled valuable spice and slave trade routes. As time went on, Britain became the dominant colonial power, establishing control over North America, the Caribbean, India, Australia, and large parts of Africa. The British sought economic wealth through raw materials and trade, but they also spread their political and cultural systems across their colonies. Similarly, France controlled vast territories, including parts of North America, Canada and Louisiana, the Caribbean, and large sections of Africa and Southeast Asia. The French aimed to expand their influence, extract resources, and spread their language and culture. The Dutch, though not as widespread, built a powerful trade empire, dominating parts of Indonesia, South Africa, and the Caribbean. Their primary motivation was economic, as they sought to control lucrative spice and slave trades. Colonization had a lasting and complex impact on the world. While colonizing nations benefited the most, the effects were both positive and negative, depending on the perspective. Positive effects, primarily benefiting colonizers and some colonies. For the European powers, colonization brought immense economic and geopolitical benefits. Colonies provided raw materials such as gold, silver, cotton, rubber, spices, and tea, fueling the industrial growth of European economies. Trade routes were established, making colonizers incredibly wealthy. Many European cities flourished because of the influx of colonial resources, and the wealth generated allowed for advancements in science, technology, and infrastructure. Some former colonies also became prosperous, especially those that were settler colonies where European descendants became the dominant population. Countries such as the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have become some of the most developed and economically successful nations in the world. Their prosperity was built on resource exploitation, land seizures from indigenous peoples, and the introduction of European governance and economic systems that favored long-term growth. Negative effects primarily hurting the colonized peoples. Despite some perceived benefits, colonization was overwhelmingly exploitative. The biggest victims were the indigenous populations of the colonized regions, who suffered from economic exploitation, cultural erasure, forced labor, and even genocide. European powers extracted massive amounts of wealth from their colonies, while leaving the local populations impoverished. For example, Spain and Portugal drained Latin America of its silver and gold, while Britain and France heavily taxed and exploited local industries in Africa and Asia. Colonial rule often suppressed native cultures, languages, and religions. Indigenous traditions were deemed inferior, and European customs were imposed through force. Many societies experienced cultural destruction, with native institutions replaced by European governance systems. The transatlantic slave trade, which supplied labor for European plantations in the Americas, forcibly displaced millions of Africans, leading to centuries of racial discrimination and systemic inequality. One of the most devastating long-term effects of colonization was the drawing of artificial borders. European powers often divided land without regard for existing ethnic or tribal boundaries, which later led to conflicts and civil wars in Africa and the Middle East. Many post-colonial nations struggled with political instability, economic dependence on former colonial rulers, and social divisions caused by colonization. Many former colonies continue to struggle with the consequences of colonization, particularly those in Africa, South Asia, and parts of Latin America. Countries such as Haiti, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Chad, Central African Republic, and Afghanistan remain some of the poorest nations in the world. These countries suffered from extreme resource exploitation, political instability, and a lack of long-term investment in infrastructure and education during colonial rule. Many African nations, such as Sudan, Mali, and Somalia, have been plagued by civil wars and corruption, largely due to the arbitrary borders drawn by European powers. Similarly, some Latin American countries, such as Bolivia and Venezuela, continue to struggle with poverty and economic instability, partially due to the exploitative colonial economies that left them dependent on a few key exports. Colonization shaped the modern world in ways that continue to impact global politics, economies, and cultures. While some former colonies have thrived, many others continue to suffer from economic hardships, political instability, and social divisions that stem from their colonial past. Understanding the history of colonization helps us make sense of today's global relations and the lasting effects of European expansion. What do you think about the impact of colonization? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more historical deep dives. Share this video with your friends and join the conversation on social media.